What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Sooner Nation podcast. Special guest tonight, one of the Thunder guys. Craig is with us, half of the Thunder guys. Rich out of pocket today. Oklahoma demolishes West Virginia on Saturday. Their spot in the Big 12 championship game was already secured, as was TCU's, based off of the way things went down earlier in the week. So Oklahoma now facing TCU for the Big 12 championship. And out of the get-go, by the way, say hi, Craig.
Oh, hey, what's going on?
That way everybody knows I'm not doing this by myself. And we'll talk some Thunder because I know you can't have half of the Thunder guys and not talk Thunder. So we will talk some Oklahoma City Thunder basketball. But pressing right now, Big 12 championship, it's a huge gamble by the Big 12 because Oklahoma right now, they're in. They're in the playoff. And if they didn't have to play TCU on Saturday, they're still in the playoff. But now that you have to play TCU, and Oklahoma's a heavy favorite, I believe they should be a heavy favorite, but we've seen crazier things happen. I mean, they were a 21-point favorite against Iowa State. If Oklahoma stumbles, there is a massive amount of money to be lost by the Big 12 conference.
I think you were explaining this the other day, right? With the amount that you make per playoff game.
Yeah. I mean, because I feel like, and I'm a fan, you're a fan, but also I think if you step out and you try to be unbiased with this thing, there may not be a team in the country that's playing better than Oklahoma. There certainly isn't a team in the country that has a better resume than Oklahoma. And so you got to think the Sooners would be the odds-on favorite to make it to the championship game of the playoff. That's 2 playoff games. That's almost $50 million for this conference that's going to go out the window because they had to have a championship game. And I think when you look at the Big 12, by the way, I have another thought on the Big 12, and I know we're talking about all kinds of stuff, but it's Big 12 championship week. But I think all this – you remember there was all this talk when the Big 12 went down to 10 – and they didn't expand, and everyone was like, well, the Big 12's dead. I think clearly this means the Big 12's not dead. I mean, as long as Oklahoma's playing the way they are, you've got Iowa State kind of on the rise. Oklahoma State.
Did you see about the coaching situation?
No.
They just locked them down for like 5-6 more years,
yeah,
I think.
but that buy, we need to talk about coaches, but there's always a buyout in that. But I'm just saying, this will be the second time the Big 12 has had someone in the playoffs. It should be the third time. And the Big 12 messed that up. And I think the Big 12, what I was about to say is the Big 12 is not dead. I think the Big 12 is far from dead. Even if they stay at 10, I think eventually they'll go back to 12. That's why we have the championship game, kind of set the format for that. But the Big 12's got to start taking a little bit of accountability for its actions. Because the fact that there is a championship game after a round-robin schedule is just ludicrous. Everyone has played everybody, and it's crazy that it's one of those years when you look at the SEC championship, it's a rematch. The Big Ten championship,
right.
You're not getting there's Ohio State playing Wisconsin. You're not getting a rematch there. Sure. But you look across, some of these championship games, there are rematches, but it doesn't have to be that way. The Big 12 is the only conference, and this is the captain, obvious statement of the day. The Big 12 is the only conference in America that plays a round robin schedule where everybody plays everybody. And then you got to play somebody else for a championship game. It makes no sense. I guess the first thing I'm throwing at you is the payoff worth it? I mean, is it? It's a knee-jerk reaction, and it could go either way. There's also that scenario where I think like last year, the Oklahoma was clear they were cruising at the end of the season. Last year, I think if they had one more game, they might have been able to sneak in the playoffs last year. But this year, I mean, it's all out on the table. This is a big gamble by the conference. In your opinion, not as just a fan of Oklahoma, but of this conference, is it worth it to have that championship game?
It's one of those things, and I don't know if this is going to be a good answer for what you're looking for at least, but it's one of those things where you look at last season, the year before that, OU, they made it 2 years ago, correct?
Right.
But it was one of those, should they make it because there's not a conference championship game? And then last year, like you were saying, had there been a championship game for the Big 12, OU might have worked their way into that top 4. So it's one of those things where if you don't have it, OU fans were complaining a year ago, 2 years ago about not having one. Now all of a sudden we have one. And OU fans are like, well, man, if we didn't have to play in that game, we would be guaranteed. So it goes both ways. But from an unbiased standpoint, I don't think it's worth it for the amount of money that you're you're losing for the Big 12 or for the Big 12 championship game. Each school gets $1 million. Is that correct?
Right.
So you're getting about a guaranteed $12 million as opposed to around $25 million per playoff game. So OU should go out there and win, but if they don't, that's a lot of money the Big 12 is leaving on the table.
And the point I'm making is, this is the first year you've had the championship, right?
Right.
Since 2010, yeah. Okay? First year since the playoffs started that you've had the championship. But you had Oklahoma in the playoff. They lost, but Oklahoma made the playoff, made money for everybody. You could have had TCU or Baylor in the playoff. All they had to do was say, Baylor Bears are the conference champions, or TCU is conference champions. Say that what the playoff committee is doing, say that head-to-head matchup actually meant something. That's all the Big 12 had to do. But because they wouldn't name a conference champion, they got left out. Yeah. That's not the system's fault. That's Bob Bosley's fault.
Right.
That's the Big 12's fault. Now you've got Oklahoma that would have been in. They're in. They're in. You don't have to have a conference championship game to get them in. So you've got 3 years that the Big 12 would have had somebody in, and you don't have a championship game. That's just what I'm saying. It's not. I feel like instead of Bosley saying, look, we messed up. We should have named TCU. We should have named Baylor. I can't remember who won that game head to head. I think it was TCU. But we should have named a conference champion, and we didn't do that. That cost us a playoff spot. Instead of doing that, they make what's called a cash grab game, where they put everything in there. Jerry Jones just anxious to get anything he can in that venue. And now it's not. I mean, it's there, but it's not necessary. Add 2 more teams, go to divisions, and make it necessary, I guess is the point I'm making.
So with 2 different divisions, it makes sense.
Absolutely.
But when everybody's already played everybody, OU was clearly the winner of the Big 12 with only 1 loss this year. It really makes no sense to make them play again. Another thing I was going to throw in there was that you like you said, it is the Big 12's fault for not naming a champion that year, but you kind of get rid of the whole co-Big 12 champions that some schools want to claim.
Right.
So
unless you're Texas. I mean, somehow Texas is going to figure it out. But go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah. I want to say it's the way to find one true champion, but through playing a round-robin style of conference play, you've already figured that out.
You just got to stick to it. I mean, that was the thing. Their theme that year was one true champion. And you get to the end of the year, oh, wait a minute. Well, we got 2.
Right.
We know TCU beat Baylor, but come on. We don't want to hurt their feelings. By the way, I've connected the dots for Texas. Here we go. Here's how Texas gets their 2017 asterisk. You ready? Iowa State beat Oklahoma. Texas beat Iowa State. Oklahoma won the Big 12 championship. Therefore, Texas gets an asterisk as the 2017 Big 12 co-champs.
There you go.
I mean,
I saw one
somewhere
last year.
Mac Brown, his head is spinning. He's got to figure it out.
Yeah, I saw one last year was Texas beats. I don't remember how it went down. But since Kansas beat Texas and then Texas beat somebody else, Kansas was like the co-Big 12 champions or something like that.
All right, let's talk about Saturday. Offense was this offense is rolling. I mean, if there is something that's good about a Big 12 championship game, is it gives them another week of you're actually doing game prep. You played college football. You know there's a difference between a game prep week and just a bye week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're actually doing game prep week this week, which kind of lets them keep that momentum. This offense, I mean, it is what Baker Mayfield's doing efficiency-wise. He set the record last year for all-time passer efficiency rating in NCAA, and he's crushed that record this year. This offense is humming better than I've ever seen an Oklahoma offense hum. You agree with that?
Agreed, yeah. The only comparable one would be the 2008 offense.
Yeah, but I think even at that, they're not scoring at the pace that 2008 team was, but they're more efficient.
Right.
When you look at, for example, Baker Mayfield had the same number of touchdown passes as he had incompletions on Saturday. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're talking that number's high or low. You know what I'm saying? If you got 16 incompletions and 16 touchdown passes, it's a good thing. Or if you got 3 and 3 like he had on Saturday, whenever your incompletion rate and your touchdown rate are the exact same, that's a good thing. So that 2008 offense, that was a different thing. And unfortunately, the DeMarco Murray injury in the Big 12 championship game derailed them going into the BCS championship. But This offense, I mean, what's as you look back now on the season, Baker Mayfield's home career came to a close. Oklahoma fans are hoping he's got at least 3 more games as Oklahoma's quarterback. But you look back on this season, I know you were there when they lost to Iowa State. Obviously, that's the low point of the season. But offensively, go all the way back to the 1st of September and look over it. What has been the biggest surprise to you on this offense? You were a quarterback. I mean, people don't understand a lot about you, but you were an all-state quarterback. You went to college to play quarterback. So you've got an offensive mind, which I'm throwing this out. What was your when you look at this and you take away from it, what's the biggest thing that you go, wow, I didn't see that coming?
For me, obviously with the best player on the team, the best player on the offense is Baker Mayfield. But outside of that, can you name OU's second biggest offensive weapon? I think there's so many different options. Right. We knew about Mark Andrews coming in, but I don't think we knew just how many different weapons that Baker Mayfield was going to have and be able to use. I mean, you see, several different games where he hit 7 different targets,
right.
And that's impressive as opposed to previous years when you've had that one, big receiver. It almost seems like Baker Mayfield is more efficient without having that one target. Like he doesn't get stuck on that one guy, or defenses can't, shift all of their focus on one guy. But from the wide receiver position to the running back position, it seems like each week it's a different running back that has a big game. Lately it's been Rodney Anderson.
Right.
I saw something in the last 6 weeks. He's got double the amount of touchdowns as any other running back, and he's got over 300 yards more than any other running back. So, you take away that first 6 games, it looks like he's the best running back in the country. But I think Baker being able to, coming into the season, they said that OU was going to be a little bit, they as in media said that the wide receiver situation might be a little shaky for Oklahoma, and Baker Mayfield said,
"Oh, he's had that tweet. He said, you guys, you will show you, right?"
Right, and he was right. And looking at the tweet in the summer, you're like, that's just a guy being a leader. That's just a guy standing up for his teammates. But now you're thinking, wow, he was serious about that. And then Hollywood,
Marquise Brown.
Yeah, Marquise Brown said Baker said that in preseason that he was faster than D.D. Westbrook, and everybody again shook their head at that one. And then you've seen him just bust off, a slant across the middle and turn it into a big touchdown. So I've been really impressed with just how many different guys that they're able to use.
Yeah, and it's crazy. You can name. Baker Mayfield's the catalyst, but you can name the guys who have had the big games. You got Mark Andrews against Texas. You talk about Marquise Brown and the big game he's had. Rodney Anderson has had big games. Trey Sermon has had big games. Abdul Adams has had big games. And so overlooking all that is CeeDee Lamb, right, who was the constant at the beginning of the season. So it's a great point about the offense is the versatility of how many go-to guys they have on this team, because you knew coming back it was an offensive line that was touted as one of the best in the country. You have a quarterback who was touted as one of the best in the country, and then who else? And they've proven the fact that there's lots more to go. Defensively, though, you got to be a little bit concerned, particularly about the front seven. It's like everything. You get the secondary. You get the secondary fix. You pull Jordan Thomas out. You put Trey Norwood in there. You get some guys back healthy. Like Will Johnson and so forth, and you feel like you got the secondary fix, and all of a sudden West Virginia's just gashing that front seven. Are you concerned going into the TCU game about the play of the defensive line that you saw Saturday in Norman?
Not particularly, because I'm thinking about
you were at the TCU game 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, whenever it was now. So what did you see in that game that lets you say I'm not really worried about it after Saturday?
I think the way that the young core and the defensive backs were able to make plays on the ball, running, I think that's where OU is going to struggle, like you said. But if you look at when OU struggled against Texas Tech a little bit, they were doing the same thing. They were getting 5-6 yards a carry, and I was thinking, they may never throw the ball at this rate. But OU was able to make the adjustments and make it happen, and I think that's a big part of where Mike Stoops is very underrated, in the fact that we've had those first quarters, the first halves where we give up a whole bunch of yards, a whole bunch of points, but then there's always those in-game adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe coming out with the straight-up game plan, he's not the best, but he's very good at making in-game adjustments. And so, and then like I said, if we can find a way to stop the run, I like the way that the young guys were able to make plays on the ball when the ball was thrown in the air. You look at the problems with Jordan Thomas, with Parker. They're there in the right spot, but they never make that move. They never get that hand up to swat. Right. They never, they're not leaving their feet to make a play. So for me, I'm not particularly worried about Oklahoma's defense.
What's your biggest concern then, going into Saturday morning? By the way, I hate that it's 11:30 a.m. kickoff for the championship, but whatever. What's your biggest concern?
My biggest concern is TCU forcing OU to be one-dimensional. Mm-hmm. They have the best defense in the Big 12, one of the best in the country. OU was able to pass so efficiently against them in that first matchup because I feel like they were able to establish somewhat of a run. But I'm worried about their defensive line or that seven there in the box stopping Oklahoma's run game, which would make it difficult for Baker Mayfield. Because Baker Mayfield can be accurate. He's proven to make, usually you have, when you're a quarterback, you have 3, 4 if you're lucky, and then 5 seconds if you're super, super lucky to get rid of the ball. But we've seen Baker Mayfield turn that into 6, 7, 8 seconds. Mm-hmm. And so if he can create time for those receivers to get open, it's one thing. But I think what happened against Iowa State is that they were bringing such a rush on that defensive line.
But they were dropping 8 as well.
Right, but I felt like Baker wasn't able to create that time, which didn't allow receivers time to get open. Right. So if Baker can't create time to throw the ball, then that could potentially...
But I get what you're saying, but I'm also thinking, like, if I'm Lincoln Riley and I'm Baker Mayfield and they put 7 in the box, that means I've got one-on-one.
Right.
I mean, I got CeeDee Lamb, Mark Andrews, all my Marquise Brown, all my guys that I like, Jeff Badette. Someone's, I'm going to win a matchup somewhere.
Right. I mean, I saw someone say that there's not a team that can stop OU on offense this year, and Kirk Herbstreit even said, if someone was going to do it, it's going to be TCU.
Right.
They weren't able to do that, but they will make adjustments. But just going back to that whole, creating time, I think that's, if we can talk about Baker Mayfield for a little bit.
Sure.
Is that too soon?
No, jump in there. Okay. Jump in there.
I think I
think I know where you're going with this. Go ahead.
Part of what makes Baker Mayfield so good coming from a quarterback perspective is he is so efficient, yes, but it's because of his ability to create time. Like I was saying, how many times in the past have we seen OU have extremely awesome wide receiver talent and a good quarterback, but there's just not enough time for receivers to get open. And so when his guys aren't able to get open, he's able to buy time, which then expands the play. And it's easy to cover a guy for 3 to 4 seconds, but if you have to cover a guy for 7 or 8 seconds while the quarterback's running all over the field, that makes it completely different. So I guess there's really nothing to worry about on the offensive side. So maybe I was wrong. Maybe the worry should be on the defensive side of things coming into this Big 12 championship game. Were you going to agree with that? The defense was your biggest concern?
I think so. But here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that prior to this season, part of the TCU monster was Doug Meacham and Sonny Cumbie together with offense, because Gary Patterson is a defensive guru. I mean, in my opinion, he is the best defensive-minded coach in the Big 12. So he's got that going for him. And he had Sonny Cumbie and Meacham together. Now, Cumbie's gone to Kansas, which just blows my mind, but whatever. Cumbie's gone to Kansas. And so I do think that helps Oklahoma a little bit, because I'm not for sure that they are the juggernaut that they could have been. We had those two brain trusts together. But you do make a great point, and I think really you look at what TCU, Gary Patterson's going to come with a different approach this time around. I mean, they took it personal what happened. They took it personal that they couldn't have their little huddle before halftime because it was so, and they're saying all these things. Hey, it's not in Norman. It's not a home crowd for Oklahoma. It's not, and he said the game plan we did was flawed, so we're going to have a different game plan. So I think my question is, how long will it take Oklahoma to figure it out? Because Lincoln Riley is a genius at figuring it out, but sometimes it takes him a little bit. And in that time, if TCU comes out and gets OU to punt 2 or 3 drives to open up the game, what is the defense going to do during that time? And when we see like West Virginia gashing Oklahoma, knowing they can't throw the ball. I mean, their starting quarterback doesn't make it on this trip. When you see that, my fear becomes, what happens if OU stumbles trying to figure out the defensive scheme, and then TCU goes up 14 points? What if they're up 17 points, and before Oklahoma figures it out, and then all of a sudden you're 10. It's a championship game. You know you've got the playoffs on the line. Do you press at that point? Do you press yourself to really get out of your game plan? That's what I worry about.
Right, yeah, and to me, the biggest, as far as in-game adjustments go, I think a lot of figuring it out is also going to be upon Baker Mayfield. People don't realize how much control he has over the offense as well. How many times he looks over at Lincoln Riley and calls out a play, and that play is made. Mm-hmm. Can the defense hold them during that time? Can they figure it out? I don't know, but I think I'm not worried about Oklahoma's offense scoring. I think that they'll figure it out. And you saw that Gary Patterson make the comment about them shutting out Oklahoma in the second half.
Yeah, but that's
OU wasn't trying to score the
right,
ball. They were saving that, and we knew that at the time. So that there's still stuff that they have yet to show in their playbook. Which reminds me, that was another negative I was going to throw out there about the Big 12 championship. You could argue that this is just more of the playbook that is going to be exposed before heading into the playoffs. Hopefully they won't need to use it. But like you said, it is a championship game. It's one of those games where you could have to play all of your cards.
That's a good point. But I also will tell you, you've got about a month to figure out some schemes, some new wrinkles after this. I say you play all your cards, you get there, and then you figure out your new wrinkles from that point. Baker Mayfield closes out his career in Norman, doesn't start the game. I thought he would sit out longer than one series. He's in there after the first series. Your thoughts? Because I think you said one series.
Yeah, I assumed it would be once. Usually when coaches say a player is not starting, it's one series. If their coach says he's going to be suspended and it's going to be longer than that, he said it's going to be a quarter, it's going to be a half. And so I kind of got the sense or the feeling that that's the way it would be. I saw some people saying, his punishment was a whole 2 plays, but
well, that's Kyler Murray's fault,
right? And
you can't blame that on Baker Mayfield. Lincoln Riley, I bet Lincoln Riley had no idea that opening drive was going to be 2 plays.
Right. But to me, the not starting was not the punishment. I mean, it added to it, but the punishment was him not being a captain.
Right.
I don't have the greatest relationship with my former school, but had I not been able to be a captain on my senior night, it would have devastated me. Even though, you know what I mean?
Right.
Even though I didn't quite have the best feelings, they didn't have the best feelings for me. Still, the pride there and what you get out of being a captain and being a team leader. Like I said, at the high school level, that would have devastated me. So I can only imagine what it was like for Baker Mayfield, who grew up being an Oklahoma fan, not making it there. And then he walks on and he's a star. That like I was hurting for him because I could relate to that. So like I said, I don't buy into this whole he didn't really have a punishment because he only had to sit out 2 plays. But like I said, the punishment was on the not being a team captain rather than.
But his jersey was there. He didn't make it, but his jersey did.
Yeah, that was funny to me. But someone said that the fact that that Lincoln Riley allowed his jersey to be taken out there shows that wasn't Lincoln Riley's decision to punish him. I don't necessarily agree with that.
I don't even know that Lincoln Riley knew they were taking the jersey out there.
Right.
Because where you're there and you're seeing it unfold, they didn't pull that jersey out until they're going. It's not like they started on the OU sideline with the jersey.
But where did they get it from?
Somebody had it.
Right, but I'm saying, because Baker had his game jersey.
Oh, yeah, there's jerseys all over that locker room. I mean, it's not
but
like...
I'm saying, like, whenever I played college football, which not at the same level as Oklahoma, but we had people who handled all of our equipment. You would walk in on Saturday mornings and all of your stuff is hanging there for you.
I'm going to give you a scenario. I know exactly what you're saying, but I'm going to give you a scenario, okay? You're the equipment manager. You know one of the equipment managers, right?
Right.
So let's say you're you're Justin, okay, the guy you know, and Orlando Brown comes up to you and says, "Hey, Justin, I need a Baker Mayfield jersey. What are you doing?"
I'm going to get him a Baker
Exactly.
Mayfield. I'm not going to tell him no.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, the crowd was insane Saturday. And I think the Baker Mayfield suspension, senior day, all that added to it. But, man, that crowd was clearly the best crowd of the season was the night OU played TCU. Hands down, I think that was the second best crowd.
Mm.
That you got to give credit to the crowd for the way they stood up for their team. They backed their team. Incredible performance by the team, but the crowd gets the game ball, in my opinion. Most frustrating thing to you on Saturday, though, with all the extracurricular stuff, do you feel like OU was targeted more than West Virginia was with the flags, or do you think it was just washed out that way?
I definitely think so, but I also feel like that's been a reoccurring thing. I think teams purposely try to do that to Oklahoma, knowing the kind of guy that Baker Mayfield is with his competitive nature. Like I said, I can relate to that as well. I was kind of the same feisty guy whenever I played football. So yes, I think the refs did target Oklahoma more on that side of things. I mean, you watched when Samia was being pushed down on the ground by the throat, hands all on his face mask. He throws the arm up to get the guy off of him. All of a sudden, Samia's being ejected. Not even a warning. And,
right.
and that's what the you were at the game, so you didn't get to hear the broadcast. But they were saying, we want an explanation there. If you threw a punch, that's one thing. But if it's just an unsportsmanlike penalty, you get 2 of those before you're tossed. But they didn't even give a warning. They didn't give any explanation other than he was tossed out of the game. So I don't know if Oklahoma's kind of on a no tolerance thing right now.
Exactly. That's you hit it on the head. I strongly believe, and I'll tell you what my evidence is on this, but I strongly believe as part of the punishment, the reprimand, if you will, from the Kansas thing, Bob Bosley said there is no tolerance with Oklahoma. And I think you saw it because how many times did you see West Virginia give a shove? Or right after Samia was ejected, one of the West Virginia defenders plays over and he just straight up shoves Mark Andrews almost back onto the pile.
Right.
And I said at the time, if Mark Andrews falls in that pile, he's getting a penalty for falling on the pile.
Yeah.
That's the way it was going. But you saw shoves, you saw holds. The pass interference that gives West Virginia the final touchdown was just atrocious. That ball lands out of bounds. It's not a catchable pass. I know you can make an argument for the hold, but even if he doesn't hold,
it was a touch he called at the beginning.
Even if he doesn't hold, there's no one's catching that pass. I was saying this during the game. There is a zero tolerance policy in Oklahoma, and I'm wondering if it will continue into the Big 12 championship. But I found out afterwards, hey, there's Bob Bosley. He's right there in Norman watching the game. Why is he in Norman? Someone said, well, because, Big 12 championship. Well, you know what? If you want to go see a game where the Big 12 championship's on the line, go to Waco, Texas, where TCU is playing Baylor. And by the way, that game gets out of control as well. And it's the first time I've ever been around a sporting event, ever watched a sporting event, ever known of a sporting event where every single player got a penalty.
Yeah.
I mean, the referee's like, okay, that's unsportsmanlike on the entire Baylor bench, unsportsmanlike on the entire TCU bench. By the way, the officials took the cheesy way out because there should have been ejections in that. That was much more egregious than what Drew Samia did.
Right.
And no one got ejected in that game, which tells me that there was a target on Oklahoma. And by the way, I don't see how you can do that. I mean, and this is what I said last week on our podcast with Rich. At what point did Oklahoma get unsportsmanlike against Kansas? Well, it was in the third quarter when Baker Mayfield does his thing. At what point did Kansas get unsportsmanlike with Oklahoma? Before the game even started. But yet Oklahoma's got the target. It just goes back to what I said initially to start this podcast, is that there's got to be some accountability. And I think when you look at who's running this conference, there's got to be a change. I mean, there's got to be. Bob Bosley's not getting the job done. You want to talk about expansion? He's not getting the job done. Louisville begged to get into this conference. Bosley didn't make it happen. You had Houston, you had BYU begging to get in. Didn't happen. You don't need a conference championship game. You're potentially losing millions of dollars by having a conference championship game. I think it's time to start putting the accountability where it belongs, and everything from that to officiating. there used to be the Pac-12. You could guarantee every year Pac-12 worst officiating in college football. That's not a guarantee anymore because you watch Big 12 officiating and it is terrible.
Right. I don't think they know how to they as in the officials know how to handle certain situations. Like you were talking about with the TCU game, they gave everybody a penalty for the fight. There should have been ejections. They should have taken time to look at that. But then you go to this Oklahoma-West Virginia game, leading up to the is it Samia or Samia?
Yeah.
Samia ejection. I mean, it was 6 or 7 plays in a row that West Virginia, both, the play would end and then both teams would get face to face, but it's because West Virginia was shoving. And I think, if you're a ref and, the first or second time that happens, you throw a warning, you know what? I'm all for as much trash talking as possible in football games. I know you are. As much as it goes back and forth, that's fine with me. But throw a warning, give a sideline warning, give each team a warning. If they had done something within those first 2 to 3 plays to or offsetting penalties even something to where because these college teams they run for every yard of penalties they have. There's some sort of punishment for that. Punish these guys, and then you never get to that point, that big fight. You never get to the ejections. But they did nothing. They let it go on for 6 and 7 plays in a row. What it was looking like to me was that Oklahoma was just bullying West Virginia. They were getting dominated up front. Baker Mayfield was shredding them apart. We were gashing them 6-7 yards per carry. And they were just trying to do something, fight back. I don't know if they were upset that they were getting dominated. But yeah, if you do something there within those first couple of plays to get they lost control of the game in both situations, at the OU West Virginia and at the Baylor TCU game. The refs completely lost control of the situation, and that's because they don't know how to handle themselves in that situation.
I agree. But again, where's the accountability for that? And this has always been from the time I started covering sports, and it's not just football, it's basketball, it's baseball. If you're a coach, you're Lon Kruger, and you decide for whatever reason, I'm going to pull my star player out. For whatever reason, I'm going to pull Baker Mayfield. Here's a great example. Mark Richt for the University of Miami pulled Rozier out in that game where they lost to Pitt over the weekend. You know what? Mark Richt had to go and sit in front of a room of reporters, and they asked him, what was your decision on that? Why did you pull Rozier out? And he had to sit there and say, here's what I was thinking, here's why I did that. No one asked that official, what did you see? When you ejected Samia, he didn't have to sit in front of anybody. And the times that it does happen, even like I've covered the College World Series for women, the softball World Series, and there's questionable. There was some ejections last year with UCLA, which I didn't think deserved ejection, but those people that rejected the coach has to serve a suspension to start this coming season. Even at that, they go to a, quote, pool reporter, and the pool reporter releases a statement. But they don't have to sit there and answer any questions from anybody. And then you see the conference will reprimand the officials or whatever.
But what does that even mean?
Exactly. It's and if that's across college athletics, I don't get it. Lincoln Riley can't go and say, hey, I felt like that was a bad call. The official got that wrong. He can't say that. Or I remember one time I was interviewing Pete Hughes, baseball coach, after a game, and there was a heated exchange there. And I just asked, I said, hey, Coach, tell me about what are your thoughts on that? And the first thing he said to me was, well, I'm telling you this, we're in the wrong. And the reason I'm telling you that is because if I tell you anything else, I'm going to get fined. I mean,
right, and that's the thing is coaches are held accountable for what they do and say. The players, obviously, Baker Mayfield was held accountable, but where is the punishment for the officials?
Yep.
Where do they have to testify for what they did, or come out and say this was my reasoning behind it? But never mind, we'll get into this.
Well, I was saying I had the same conversation with Lon Kruger. Lon Kruger is, and you've met Lon Kruger, nicest guy. I mean, as far as college athletics go, I don't know if I've ever met a nicer head coach in any sport than Lon Kruger. Well, maybe Patty Gasso, but whatever. But I remember one time Lon Kruger got technical, and I was talking to him. I was like, Coach, it's so out of character for you to get a technical. And he just looked at me, and he was like, yeah, I guess I deserved it. And I know the only reason he said that was because if he says, I was standing up for my player because the referee, everybody knew the situation, but if he explains what actually happened, he gets fined. But those officials, no official ever has to sit in front of a group of reporters and answer questions about their decisions. And I think that's wrong about college athletics, but that's not just the Big 12 problem. We've got to talk about Oklahoma City Thunder because I can't have you here and not talk Thunder. But I do got to say this because I think you agree with me. The only flag against OU on Saturday that I approved of was against Jordan Thomas.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I was livid about that when I was yelling at him through the TV.
I'm like, here's exactly what I said, and I probably shouldn't have said it, but I said it there in the moment in the stadium. I said, dude, you lost your starting job to a freshman. What are you doing?
Right. And yeah, I said something a little worse. I called him a scrub. But, you've lost your playing time. You're in there for meaningless minutes, and you're trying to work your way back into the starting lineup. We're all hoping that never happens. But for his sake, he's trying to fight his way back in, and getting a stupid penalty like that is certainly not the way to do it. He didn't even really defend the play. The only reason that
it was an overthrown pass.
Right, it was on the quarterback's fault. So maybe had he made some miraculous play, maybe he had some sort of right to hop up and say something. But you can't just happen to be in the area and there's an incomplete pass and you're gonna stare, get up face to face with the guy and stare down at him. You just can't do that. It's uncalled for. Before we switch to NBA, I just want to say that Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback to ever play at the University of Oklahoma.
I was wondering when you were going to get to this because I thought you were going there.
I intended to, but I got sidetracked. You don't agree with that, and so I want to.
Well, no. Here's the thing. It's not that I don't agree with it. I'm not ready to say that yet. I'm not. I mean, he's phenomenal. He averaged 20 yards per play on Saturday. Yeah. There's been so many great quarterbacks in various aspects of the game. I mean, you go all the way back to Jack Mildren. Now, they didn't back then. Jack Mildren, and then a couple of decades later, you have Jamel Holloway. The different offense, they didn't throw the way they do now. If you're talking about stats and passing, you're probably right. And I may by the end of this, when it's all said and done, I may end up agreeing with you. I'm just not ready to jump on there yet because I think what Sam Bradford did was invaluable to this team. And I think if you have a healthy DeMarco Murray, then Oklahoma already has 8 national championships. What Josh Heupel did, not the same type of physical quarterback that Baker Mayfield is, but what Josh Heupel meant to this team was probably every bit as equivalent to what Baker Mayfield means to this team. Think about it. 1998 was a bad season. I know you don't remember that, but 1998 was a bad season. Bob Stoops comes, and 99 they go to the bowl game, and they lose to Ole Miss. 2000, they're national champions. So how in 2 years do they go from terrible to bowl win to national champion? The catalyst in all that was Josh Heupel. And when I hear people talk about, well, what Baker Mayfield means to this team, I get it. I totally get it, and I don't disagree with it. But he's not the first quarterback who's meant that much to a team. Josh Heupel meant that much to the team 17 years ago. So I'm just not ready to go there yet. The argument would be, Josh Heupel meant that much. Baker Mayfield meant that much. Now let's compare stats. Mm-hmm. And Baker Mayfield wins that in a landslide. I think if Baker Mayfield leads them through the college football playoffs and we're celebrating the 8th national championship, then I have no other way to go than to say, best quarterback in OU history. Even if they don't, I could probably at the end of the day say, but I want his career to come to a close before we get there. I'm just not ready to say it now because I have a longer history of watching OU football than you do, and I remember some really great quarterbacks. But go ahead.
That's fair. But let me tell you why I am ready to be there and to say that he is the best ever played at the University of Oklahoma. For start, had he had all 4 years, he would be. I think he would catch Landry Jones' record in passing yards. He's not going to get there. Only playing 3 years at Oklahoma. Numbers that stick out to me are 33-5. That's his overall record as an Oklahoma quarterback. So I see what you're saying with what Josh Heupel was able to do. But I think Baker throughout 3 years has done that. He's taken a team, for a while, yes, Oklahoma, you went early 2000s, we were going to the national championship, like every 2-3 years, it seemed like they were averaging a title appearance, to where, 2009, 2010, they started struggling. We were seeing 3, I think 4, maybe even a 5-loss season when we ended up playing Iowa in the
Desert Bowl.
Yeah.
And then you also had we played Stanford out in El Paso.
And so we were seeing these 3 to 4 loss teams, and Baker Mayfield comes to Oklahoma, and he flat out says in his first season here, that's not acceptable for the University of Oklahoma. That's not what we're going to do. Right. And he stood by that. He's lived up to that, to those expectations. Another thing is undefeated in true road games. I don't know another quarterback anywhere who was undefeated in true road games. To me, that's impressive that the dude is literally better on the road.
Let me tell you how impressive Oklahoma's true road game streak. Do you know the last quarterback to lose a true road game?
Landry Jones?
Mm-hmm. At Miami. I think it was at 2009. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's impressive. Impressive. Baker Mayfield, what's done but what Oklahoma has done in general is impressive.
Yeah. Let's see, where was I at? Undefeated in true road games. Another thing to me is when you look at the leadership abilities that this guy has, like you were saying, it's very similar to Josh Heupel in the way that this team rallies behind him. This team fights for him, but the fan base is also there. And they were saying on the game Saturday that he could be the most loved player of all time, and I think that could be true as well. The only crowd things I can really remember is Rufus Alexander. The crowd getting behind him every single tackle with the
Yeah.
But as far as a team rallying behind a guy, Baker Mayfield, I don't remember anything like that before.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just not willing to say you're right. And here's the thing: you look at Josh Heupel coming out of Snow Junior College, and no one wanted him. Baker Mayfield went to Lubbock, Texas, walked on because no one wanted him. Very comparable. But again, you make great arguments, but you can make the same arguments about Josh Heupel. And by the way, Josh Heupel went undefeated. The last time an Oklahoma football team's ever gone undefeated was Josh Heupel. So you can make those same analogies. Now, is Baker Mayfield a better pro prospect? Yes. I get all that, but I'm just saying for what they mean to the team and the best ever. When you're talking about the best ever, that's a big label, and I'm just not ready to go there yet.
Right. I see what you're saying, but I just feel like
I'll tell you this though. I don't even know who the best ever is. I don't. If you press me, I could tell you who the candidates are, and Baker Mayfield be one of the candidates. But honestly, if you press me, let's say the modern era of my lifetime, okay? So just in my lifetime, I'm going to go Jack Mildren, Jamel Holloway. You got to throw in Josh Heupel. You got to throw in Sam Bradford, and you got to throw in Baker Mayfield. I don't know. You tell me.
I think Jason White's got to be in there too.
Yeah,
with winning a Heisman.
And here's the thing that's overlooked about Jason White. When people talk about stats, and again, what Baker. I'm not trying to take anything away from Baker, but Baker's a 3-year starter. Landry Jones was a 4-year starter practically because Sam Bradford goes out when Jones was a freshman. What if Jason White had 3 or 4 years? What if Sam Bradford, had 4 full years? All those things, not to take away from what they're doing, but just think, man, what if it doesn't make him a better quarterback than these other guys? Josh Heupel had 2 years. What if he had 4?
Yeah, but that's why I don't even really want to go into the stats because it's a different game. Josh Heupel wasn't throwing the ball the same amount of times that Baker Mayfield's throwing the ball.
I don't think anybody threw the ball as much as Landry Jones though.
Right. So it's the game has changed. And so I see that. And so that's why I didn't take the whole stats. I use numbers and performance wise. After he wins the Heisman this year, he will also be the only college football player to ever finish as a Heisman finalist for 3 years in a row.
And hopefully he wins it this year. I don't see how he doesn't win it.
And so I'll end with this. I am already willing to say that Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback out of OU of all time. If he wins the Heisman, which he will, and if he can win a national championship, I think he deserves to be up there with the Tim Tebow's of greatest college football players of all time.
All right, can't disagree with that, but we'll revisit that. We'll make it a bet to revisit that. We'll have to have 50% of the Thunder guys back on, and we'll revisit that conversation. He's Craig. I'm Matt. Listen to the Sooner Nation podcast, part of Heartland Sports, heartland-sports.com. We got to talk about some Oklahoma City Thunder basketball because I have you on here with me.
Thunder, feel the thunder, lightning and the thunder, feel the thunder, lightning and the thunder.
So I've got to preface this. By the way, we have some amazing Thunder music that we're going to play.
Oh yeah.
So you're gonna have to come back, and when we piece all this together, you're gonna like it.
Okay.
But I got to preface this. I mean, you know this. I think people who listen to our podcast know this. I'm not an Oklahoma City Thunder fan, and that makes me a bad guy in a lot of ways. Okay, but even you would have to agree with me. This team is way underperforming.
Agreed. Not to say I'm getting close to working my way out of fandom too. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, but it is hard. It's hard it's hard to watch them play with not only the underperforming, but I feel like there's absolutely no effort there as well.
Yeah, and that's what, to me, that's the most frustrating thing. Because and I know as a fan, you can't say you weren't shocked that not only they beat Golden State, but they just kind of took them behind the woodshed. There's nobody, I know Gabe Eichert kind of threw some stuff out there. Mark Rogers on the Sports Animal, they threw some stuff out there but even those guys, there's no way you're going to tell me you weren't shocked at how bad they beat Golden State. But then you come off that, you lose to Detroit, you lose to Dallas, you've got a win over what many people still believe the best team in the NBA. But then you've got two losses to what most people believe as the two worst teams in the NBA. You lose to Sacramento, you lose to Dallas. I can't get it. I was on board last year by saying Billy Donovan was the problem. And I was, people said I was a hater. People said I didn't know. But I don't think Billy Donovan, it doesn't always work to go from college to pros in any sport. And you've got examples of that. There's a lot of guys out there. Lon Kruger, who I believe is an amazing coach. I have a lot of respect for Lon Kruger. He wasn't an NBA coach. Now, he had an opportunity at it. He was there in Atlanta. Wasn't an NBA coach. Calipari was tried it. You've got all these guys who try it, and they don't work out. They come back down to the college level, and I think that's where Billy Donovan's going to fit in. I don't think Billy Donovan knows. In college, you can manage egos, and you can manage guys a whole lot better than you can in the pro. Clearly, Russell Westbrook is alpha male, and this is what I said going back preseason. It's alpha male. The thing with the Thunder is, how long does it take Carmelo Anthony and Paul George to fall in line, and what does Russell Westbrook have to do? It was great, his performance against Golden State, but my thought was that could be a bad thing as well, because now he's going to force himself, and sometimes alpha male has to do that, but how will Paul George and Carmelo Anthony respond to that? I'm just throwing stuff out there from a guy on the outside looking in. I would love to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I think all of the issues right now have to fall under the coaching category. When you look at effort, when you look at energy that this team brings on, night in and night out. I've been saying this a lot on the Thunder Guys, our other podcasts. I've said it in recaps. When's the last time you saw Billy Donovan break a clipboard? When's the last time you saw him take his jacket off and yell at somebody? When's the last time you saw him, loosen up his tie or anything? I mean, it seems like the dude sits there lifeless almost with his arms crossed, or either that he's sitting down. And I think when you've got a coach who's bringing out no energy every night, it transfers down into the players more so than people think. I mean, we've talked about how Russell Westbrook has been more vocal even than he's been in previous years with the refs. You've got the Melo ejection on that horrible.
Which I agree. As a guy who's not a fan of the team, that was, when we talk about a bad officiating, that was atrocious.
But where was Billy Donovan? Where was Billy Donovan saying, I'm going to take a technical foul right here to show my guys? Right. It maybe this is what I was saying last week on our other podcast, was that maybe if Billy Donovan would get a technical foul, maybe if Billy Donovan would yell at the ref, Russell Westbrook wouldn't have to. Mm-hmm. He still would because he's Russell Westbrook, but I don't think he would have to, take time out of a live ball to be, yapping at the ref. And so I think the energy and the positivity of this team is transferring down from the head coach. But then also, like you were saying, with managing egos. I had someone tell me the other night on Twitter that, all these things are assuming that these guys listen to Billy Donovan. Mm-hmm. Well, if they're not listening, that's on Billy Donovan. As a coach, you have to find. But look at all the talent what's his name in Miami, the head coach, Eric Spoelstra. Uh-huh. Look at the talent he was able to manage there.
But I feel like this is where I want to interject. I feel like managing egos is Eric Spoelstra going to LeBron James and saying, "Hey, LeBron, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think?" And then LeBron James speaks on your behalf. That's how you have to do it that way. I don't think Billy Donovan has gone to Russ and said, "Russ, here's the game plan. I need you to be my voice," because look, if you tell what happens if you tell Carmelo, "Are you going to bench him?" And if you bench him, then you're going to have ownership bring that, right. Hey, we're not paying this guy $100 million or whatever it is to ride the pine. You can't do it. You have to manage people before the game starts in the NBA, right, and in college and in professional football. And he can't jump in Carmelo's face. He can't have a conversation, in my opinion. You can have a conversation with Russell Westbrook before the game and say, "Here's our game plan. Here's what I need from you. And if we want to win this game, Russ, here's how we're going to win it." And if Russ wants to interject his opinion, then there's a little give and take. And at that point, when it goes south in the game, then you can get into Russell Westbrook and say, "This is not what we talked about. This is not what we agreed on. This is on you." You know what I'm saying? You can do it that way, but he's not doing that.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but that still falls under Billy Donovan's fault, in my opinion.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is you can't just, in the NBA, PJ Carlesimo, who was your first ever coach for the Thunder, tried that with Latrell Sprewell and got choked out.
Right.
You can't do it in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean... But another name is Doc Rivers. The way he was able to do with the Celtics. I mean, he had three guys. He had
Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett was the voice.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. But if he's not transferring that to Russell Westbrook, then that's not on Russell Westbrook.
And we all know that Doc Rivers needed to have a voice because he doesn't have one of his own.
He definitely can't talk on his own. But I just think you got to find a way to say, or to get into the head of Carmelo Anthony and say, we don't need that 5 seconds into the shot clock with that defender right in your face.
But didn't you know that's what you were getting in Carmelo Anthony?
Yes. But like I said, and I'm not even saying Carmelo Anthony's to blame here. I mean, he was the only guy who shot 50% the other night against Dallas.
But against Minnesota, he was like 2 of 20 or something like that.
Right, but then against Dallas the other night, Paul George was 1 of 9.
But that's what I'm saying. There's got to be you got to have someone that says, "Look, it's not your night, man. Rebound and kick out. Rebound and find one of those 3 guys has got to be on." If they're all 3 out, then you're just out of luck. But it's got to be figured out. Hey, if you're 2 for 20, it wasn't Russell's night against Dallas the other night. 1 for 9 or whatever. Kick out, man. Be the decoy and let someone else be the hero.
Something's got to happen because the Thunder were 7-9 heading into Golden State, and fan morale, team morale was at an all-time low. But you're still thinking, okay, if we can get a win against Golden State, we can turn things around. Mm-hmm. So they do, and in dominating form. And so you're going from 7-9 thinking, is this team even gonna be a contender in the West? So they dominate the Warriors. You're back to thinking this could be one of the best teams in the NBA. They can start to flip things around. They lose to Detroit. You're at 8-10. You're like, bummer for sure. But, we got Dallas tomorrow. And then they come out and they lose that 3rd game in a row to Dallas. That's just not acceptable. Dallas was 4-15 at the time. I believe Sacramento also only had 4 wins.
Yeah, which of the two is more egregious in your opinion, Dallas or Sacramento?
Dallas, because of the way that they lost. The Thunder were never in that game.
And it's after the Golden State win.
The Thunder competed with Sacramento. They didn't win, but they were in the game. They had the lead at points. The Thunder, 37 points in one half is not acceptable for the offense, and that's why something's got to happen. I don't know. I'm not a fan of Billy Donovan at the moment. I'm not saying 20 games in you got to fire him. I don't think it needs to be an immediate decision.
Memphis fired their coach today, bro.
But I'm saying you get to the point where, at 10 games we were like, okay, it's too early to fire Billy Donovan. Now we're at 20 games and we're still saying it's too early. But what we get to 30, and then we're heading into the All-Star break. Do you want to make that transition before the All-Star break or after the All-Star break? When does it become too late? So I don't know. I hope if you're looking to keep your job, I hope you're best friends with Sam Presti because otherwise, I think Billy Donovan has to be on the hot seat.
Okay, 3 things real fast. First of all, just that harsh dose of reality coming your way. Okay, some of this is in jest, but the Clippers had a 9-game losing streak, and you realize the Thunder are 1 game better than the Clippers. Right. That's their harsh dose because everybody talks about how bad the Clippers have been. The Thunder are almost right there with them. Second thing is, are you willing to say that they made the wrong choice by letting Scotty Brooks go?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I'm all there. I will apologize for – I still see the decision at the time, and we don't have to go too far into this. I think you're thinking it's not working out. Obviously they hadn't won a championship yet, and they definitely should have. And I think you were trying to keep Kevin Durant, and you were trying to show him that you were trying to keep him, and so you make a coaching change because you don't want to be transitioning coaches in the summer that you're trying to get your star player back. So I see that they were trying to get that done before he went into free agency. But yeah, look at what Scott Brooks is doing with the Wizards.
Exactly. So, and then here's my third thing, and this is it. And if you want to add any more on that, you can. But when you look in the West and you look at what Golden State, they're going to be there. You look at what Houston's doing right now. You look at what San Antonio's doing. They don't even have Kawhi Leonard yet.
Right.
Golden State. Where do you see the Thunder? Where do you realistically see them finishing now? And what needs to happen? Because we're almost to December. I firmly believe you don't push the playoff panic button until after the All-Star break, unless you're like Sacramento or Dallas.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying push the playoff button, the panic button, but where do you see this team finishing? Because if they're going to get top 4, which I think we'd all agree, if they're not top 4, man, it is a huge disappointment. But you got to go in to even get in the top 3, I think you got to go in a 20-2 run at some point this season. Give me your thoughts as a fan. Where are you right now in this? And is there a frustration level building as you see teams like Houston? They play without Chris Paul. You see San Antonio without Kawhi Leonard. Golden State's got their flaws, but they're still there. Talk to me through this.
I think, the frustration is definitely there for everybody. You're reaching a point where this team could be a top 4 team still, but they're running out of time. You're going to dig yourself a hole to where you don't have time to catch up. And that doesn't mean, though, that heading into, games 60, 70, 80, that they won't be playing like a top 3 team. And so if they struggle early, I don't mind the struggle early if that is going to change into something. And you don't want to see a team peak too early, and that's what teams like Houston and San Antonio even have done in the past. Mm-hmm. I think Golden State, they've already won a championship with this team, so you know what you're going to get there. But I think Houston, even Boston might struggle with that a little bit. They're going to get a point to the middle of the season. They always talk about, are they bored with the regular season? I don't really buy into that. They like to blame a lot of Cleveland's losses on that Cleveland only plays for the playoffs. They're bored with that. But I think as long as the Thunder are playing their best basketball towards the end of the season, it's not going to matter if they're 3 or 4. You definitely don't want to, I don't think, get matched up against Houston or Golden State in the first round, but they would have to be 6, 7, 8.
You have to be below,
right. I don't see them being below. I don't see them being below 5.
Yeah. But I just feel like, again, I'm not a Thunder fan, but if I was, to me, what I'm saying is get top 4, and if you go, like in May, if you're in the season and you're like winning something like 17 of your last 20 games, I'm feeling pretty good about this team going to the playoffs because they've proved they can play with anybody. I think if they're doing that at the end of the season, and the reality is it doesn't matter who you're playing, you just got to win one game on the road and you swap that home court advantage back to you.
Right. The problem seems simple to fix for the Thunder when you look at they're the best team defensively in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And their offense isn't there, which I don't think anyone saw that coming. I thought the defense would be improved, picking up Paul George.
Right.
But I had no idea that with 3 of the top 10 isolation scorers in the NBA, the Thunder would be struggling to put up points. When you see them only allowing 97, 94 points per game on a regular basis, that should be good enough to win. You should be able to score 95, 98 to top those opponents. But they're not. Like I said, they put up 37 points in one half against the Mavericks. How does that happen? And so I think with 3 guys on this team that can score the way that they've been proven over years to be able to do that, at some point they've got it. They're going to find the rhythm. I think that will work out offensively. So I guess I'm just trying to find one positive thing right now.
Yeah.
And at the moment, the only thing there is to be positive about is the defense.
And to me, the biggest concern is losing control of those games. You grab control of them early, and then you just see them lose. And that's why a lot of people thought against Golden State it was going to slip away, but it never did. Okay, we got to jump out of here. He's Craig. I'm Matt. Half of the Thunder guys. Real fast. Score prediction Saturday morning, 11:30 kickoff. Oklahoma, TCU, Big 12 championship. Give me a score.
I'm going to go Sooners by a touchdown, 38-31.
Dude, I got them by a touchdown, but I've got 31-24. I think the point spread's spot on. I think it's a closer game than what we saw in Norman. We'll be back next week to talk more about it. You're welcome back on the podcast anytime.
Sweet.
Thanks for hanging with us. And as football winds down, we'll probably need to jump on here and talk more Thunder anyway. Heartland-sports.com. Tell them real fast how they can find the Thunder guys.
The Thunder guys are on Twitter and Instagram at the Thunder guys. We're also in charge of writing for Thunder on Heartland Sports, so you can find us either place.
And you have your own podcast.
We do. The podcast is on the Crossover Radio app, but we also do a YouTube Live that you can find it under the Thunder guys.
All right, man. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week, everybody. Enjoy the game, and we'll talk to you next week.